itself acknowledged Ambazonia's existence. In a case, it was the Bamenda High Court case HCB 28/92. He agreed. Additionally, President Villa, some of you may remember, it's funny how these conflicts come and go. A huge thing in the mid-early 2000s, the Bokassa conflict with Nigeria. Well, actually, it was in the early 90s with Sani Abacha, who isn't getting a lot of good press these days. But when that conflict with Nigeria was resolved, Paul Biya signed a UN treaty, in front of God and everybody in the UN that said the following. Let me quote. I, President Paul Biya of the Republic of Cameroon, in a bid to provide lasting peace to the Bokassa conflict, do hereby commit myself and my government to respect the territorial boundaries of my country as obtained at its independence. Cameroon's independence was obtained January 1st, 1960. Ambazonia wasn't a part of Cameroon in January 1st, 1960. Ambazonia was still part of Nigeria for a few months and then free. So Paul Biya promised in a treaty, and this is important, I'm going to pull back to where I should be, where my country could be. Because he is French, so clearly he says, l'état c'est moi. The state is me. Paul Biya is Cameroon. Cameroon is Paul Biya. I'm going to pull back, and this is where we're going to be. And the UN believed him because they sent surveyors out and they built these giant pillars that are on the border between Ambazonia and French-speaking Cameroon. So if for a moment you think that there's no legitimacy to this claim, there's a fence. Pretty close to a fence anyway. There's a wall separating Ambazonia, the free and independent nation of Ambazonia, from French Cameroon. And I found out something today, speaking with His Excellency the President. I find this stunning, and I hope people that are listening and watching today think about what I'm about to say, the gravity of this. If you live in Ambazonia, if you're an English-speaking resident of Ambazonia, and you cross the Mungo River, if you cross into French Cameroon, you have to go through a security checkpoint. You have to present documents, and you have to pay customs on anything you bring back or take in. Just like if you're in Italy and you're crossing over to Switzerland. Just like you're in France and you're crossing into Portugal. It's not one country. They don't think for a minute it's one country. They know better. They're just not acting better because they have themselves a nice colony. And that cannot stand. That house of sand cannot stand, and how great will be that fall. Further, this may be a little unfair, but that's what lawyers do. We bring up unfair stuff. There's a really good chance Paul Biya isn't even legitimately the president of Cameroon. Under any international accords, any concept of international law, because what the Cameroonian Constitution says, that the National Assembly president becomes the head of state until the president is elected within 90 days. So when Ahijo resigned, what should have happened was the head of the National Assembly, president of the National Assembly, should have become the president of Cameroon. Unfortunately, he was Ambazonian. His name was St. Muna. He should have been the president of Cameroon, and then there should have been an election. If anything happens when you have slaves or a colony, you don't let them lead you. So Biya appointed himself president, illegitimately. Illegitimately. How great was its fall when the house of sand, the house built on sand, came down. So you see, there is no basis for any argument against Ambazonia. You have to tell the truth if you're Cameroonian, or if you're on the side of the French-speaking Cameroonians. If you're Macron, before you go to bed at night, when he's not busy telling us how many plastic bottles we should use and standing on tables and cheering on soccer teams. He has to tell himself the truth. And the truth is, Ambazonia is the vassal state, the colony, the slave of Cameroon and of France. They're still a colony in West Africa. He has to tell himself that truth, because no other truth will abide, because there is no other truth. Everything else is a lie, and it's been a lie every day for decades. That's the hope. How great will be the fall. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. It's deeply unfortunate. What I just told you, the history of the illegitimacy of this whole process, would be enough for independence. But there's an even greater thing that has happened. There's even more of a reason that everyone out there needs to join together for justice, for liberty, for independence, freedom, equality, and humanity. Now, Biya has embarked on a course of genocide, mass slaughter of innocents. He's not slaughtering his people. He's slaughtering civilians in a country that he has taken over. And they tend to be children. They tend to be beautiful children. And they tend to be women and young men. And they're all civilians because there's not an Ambazonian army. And there's this tendency, and I don't want to get too horrific or explicit here, but one of the powerful messages he sends to those that he's enslaved and colonized, the favored way of the militias, the security forces, and the military. And that's an amazing word, isn't it? Militia. That means anything. Anybody that you can pay to kill somebody, they're in a militia. And then you say it really wasn't me. And Biya says, oh, it's really Ambazonians killing Ambazonians. And that's nonsense. But one of the favored ways, the horror-filled ways, one of the reasons I can't let my children look at my computer when I'm working on these files is because of how they see, is they like to wound the Ambazonian children and women and then burn them to death while they're still alive. And they burn their homes. There's been over 400 villages razed, leveled by fire. Or they do it in the streets. And why do they do it that way? And why do I say it's a favorite tactic, not just an accident? Because they're sending a message. You shoot someone in the night, or you shoot someone in the forest 200 feet away, no one really sees that unless they're standing with you or with the person that got killed. But if there are villages being burned and the horrible screams of people being burned alive, that gets heard, that gets seen, and the message is sent. And the message is very clear. The message is, your God isn't here to help you. I command you. I am the demon, the devil that can destroy you and will. Don't rise up against me. That is the message that Paul Biya is sending. And that is the message that I hope when President Macron, before he goes to bed at night, stops telling us how many plastic bottles to drink from, stops standing on tables rooting for his soccer team, who were primarily from Africa, but that's another story. I hope he understands that that's the real message that he's sending. It's not about plastic bottles or soccer teams. It's about children being burned to death just to preserve an illegitimate colony that should have never existed. There are over 2 million people that have been displaced. Many of them have crossed over and gone into Nigeria, which has its own problems. It's not exactly a great place to flee to. Things must be pretty bad if you look to Nigeria as a place where you can find peace and comfort and respite. And under the international law, as Mr. Fine said, it's both the right and the duty of the people to throw off a government that is seeking to reduce them to absolute despotism, seeking to reduce them to slavery and to being a colony. And that politically defenseless minorities can escape oppression. And we have more than that here. It's not a minority, it's a separate nation that has been oppressed and enslaved. They've been murderously denied their internationally mandated rights.